If you ever wondered what a true melting pot looks like,
look no further than St. Croix, United States Virgin Islands.
our influences transcend all concepts of confinement. We think outside the proverbial box.
Because there is no box big enough to fit us into.
From our African heritage
To our Hispanic culture, the U.S. Virgin Islands draws from the multiple global experiences,
including our West Indian and Virgin Islands history, to create an identity that is intrinsically and unapologetically we,
Our Big Island DNA is 100% Crucian,
comprising of emerald seas
coral, sand,
and refreshing trade winds, a place of work and play,
a land where our freedom encourages visitors and residents alike to discover authentic Virgin Islands culture at every turn.
Our spirit truly comes alive during the festival for an entire month of fun, serenades, tramps, revelry, and food.
Yes, Crucian cuisine is hard to beat. Our Crucian Christmas Festival is the result of many traditions that were introduced to us hundreds of years ago from the shores of the motherland, Africa.
Over the years, it has changed significantly due to our own influences, but Masquerade,
And the Mocko Jumbie remains a mainstay.
this is the USVI Festival's historical dialogue.
Hi, my name is Chalana Brown. I am the director of Sanctuary Festival Troupe for the Crucian Christmas Festival. Additionally, I am sort of a history buff, but I wouldn't call myself a historian. I'm a Madras enthusiast and I love Caribbean culture.
I am Willard John. I am a retired educator and a culture bearer. I have been involved in the art form of promoting and preserving the Mocko Jumbies for over 40 years.
So, Mr. John, why do you think Crucian Christmas Festival is so important to our people and our culture?
The Crucian Christmas Festival is a deep part of our tradition. But not only is it tradition, it is an expression of our culture. And this has happened for so long and is embedded in the souls of the Crucian people that we look forward to this every year, and it gives us an opportunity to express our inner culture and let everyone see how proud we are of ourselves. In the days of slavery, how are these masqueraders allowed to portray their culture in the parades and in festivals and special occasions in the Virgin Islands?
Festival, unlike Carnival in St. Thomas, is intertwined with Christmas festivities. And as we know, Virgin Islanders received their freedom in 1848, but we were still contracted to plantations as of 1878. And persons would use the Christmas festival time to see other persons on other plantations that they normally wouldn't see, maybe on Sunday market, but also our culture wasn't allowed to be celebrated as much. And this was the one time that plantation owners allowed persons from the Virgin Islands to celebrate their African culture. And of course, European culture is intertwined with it.
Tell me what the significance is of the origin and the meaning of the masquerader and how it relates to our culture here in the Virgin Islands.
I would say that culture evolves, and masquerading is not only an African tradition, but masquerading are found in many, many cultures. And to the elements that whatever tribe is surrounded by. So if you're from an African tribe and you're near the water, or if you are an African tribe and you're more and a Sahara scene, the masquerader would take on the elements of that perspective region. I found masqueraders in Russia as well, because it's all about, there's a balance. Everybody knows about good and bad, and every culture has a character that brings balance to that. And so we take on the African masquerader here in the Virgin Islands, and perspective to what tribes, as history shows, when chattel slavery started here in the Virgin Islands, or then Danish West Indies, or even further back because it wasn't always under Danish colonial rule, the Moravians documented that we were of Ghanaian and Benin history background, and Benin now being Nigeria. So the masquerader that we see at this time has a lot of roots from Ghana and from Nigeria.
The Mocko Jumbie, or stilt dancing, originated on the continent of Africa, and it really originated more in a spiritual or religious context. The tallness of these entities on stilts represented the powers of God, and on special occasions they would come out and do ritualistic performances, reminding people of the spirituality of Africans and enhancing the events that are around them. Now these Mocko Jumbies covered themselves completely with their costuming. Because they represented God, they did not want to display any aspect of the human being. They didn't want to show that there's a human behind this. And so they would costume themselves completely with their African regalia, and they would come out and perform for the people.
Do you think that people know what the Mocko Jumbie actually is?
Well, the Mocko Jumbies in the Caribbean, specifically here in the Virgin Islands, back at in the early 1900s and maybe as late as the late 1800s, there were very few of them. And the African tradition was that because this was someone that represented God, they didn't really spread that tradition throughout and teach a lot of people. There were only selected people that learned it. So when this art form migrated and evolved in the Caribbean and the Virgin Islands, there still weren't a lot of people. There were certain tradition bearers that were chosen by themselves or by other individuals. And if you were a tradition bearer in the art of Mocko Jumbie, you didn't teach large groups of people. You may have one person that you mentored and taught that art form, and it stayed like that for quite some time. And I think in 1964, out of St. Thomas, a young man by the name of Alvin Ali Paul learned this art form. And he had asked one or two people that existed in St. Thomas at that time that were Mocko Jumbies to teach him, but they didn't want to teach. They didn't do much teaching. So he was able to snap a picture of one of the Mr. Richardson. He was one of the older Mocko Jumbies then. He snapped a picture of his stilts, and you know, the stilts were kept underneath the house. And you know, the old Crucian houses and Virgin Island houses were elevated on bricks at times. So underneath they would store things, and he kept the stilts there. And Ali Paul went and took a look at the stilts and took a mental picture of it, and then he went home and tried to build some himself. He eventually was able to build them, and he started teaching himself the art form. Eventually he learned. I say that story to say that after he learned, he was the first person in the Virgin Islands, and by extension the Caribbean, to teach large groups of people. So his significance was really great. He changed the costuming. He taught large groups of people for the first time, and he also taught females for the first time. As a part of African tradition, females were not a part of this. And Ali Paul taught his sister Ann Paul back in the late 60s or early 70s. And Ann Paul was, to my knowledge, the first female in the Virgin Islands to learn it. And she really broke the glass ceiling, and now we have many females dancing proudly. tell me how we could inform and educate the people here in the Virgin Islands as well as visitors that come about the masquerade tradition of the Virgin Islands.
I think there is a generational gap when we see masqueraders coming down the road in festival. I think for a long time there has been older generation that has been playing masquerading, and some of those persons like Miss Asst Williams, she's been masquerading ever since she was a little girl. However, some way it didn't get to translate to younger generations. I could pinpoint so many reasons why why it hasn't, but it's up to us now to take on some of those traditions, and that's why as a troupe director I decided to do it in a reimagined way so I can entice persons to know more about our traditions. And I don't know why, but they seem very invisible in our festival route participation, and I don't know if it's the gap between ages and not feeling, young persons not feeling appealing to that, but it's definitely an issue that we need to fix because our identity gives us strength.
My focus with my group, the Guardians of Culture Mocko Jumbies, is one, to educate people on the history of this art form and let them know where it came from, what the significance was, and continue to promote and preserve that. Now, I do understand that culture, it's dynamic and it's not static. And I know that and I understand that. And I respect the evolution of the art form. But while it's evolving, it's important for me to have people understand where it came from and to hold on to some aspects of the tradition.
How do we separate the novelty of the Mocko Jumbie from its historical significance, and how do we educate more people about it?
Well, there are a couple of things that I do. I mentioned to you that I do have a show that I call Mocko, in which I explain the history during the performance, and it's integrated with the performance, so the people really appreciate that. I think that doing workshops in the schools for children so that they could know and understand the importance of it and the importance of culture in general. And I have done and continue to do workshops in the schools, particularly with the younger elementary school students, because they like hearing the Quail Bay music. They like seeing the musical instruments of yesteryear that we use in our Quail Bay bands. And of course, they love the Mocko Jumbies and the masqueraders. So I try to put those packages together and put it into the schools so that people can know and understand what it's about. Additionally, one of the unique about that I have, we call ourselves the Guardians of Culture Mocko Jumbies, is our costuming. One of the things that I insist in our costuming is that we wear masks. And usually throughout the rest of the Caribbean, they have moved away from masking the stilt dancers. And that's the way they choose to move it. And I don't criticize it. But I wear masks because there's a certain mystery, there's a certain spiritualism in it that people detect when you wear the mask. And then they begin to ask questions, well, why are you wearing that mask? And when you look at a Mocko Jumbie that's performing with, as opposed to one without a mask, you get two different kinds of feelings. I think when you see the mask, you feel and you see the depth of the art form, and you know that there's some spiritual aspect of it, and it at times forces you to ask questions. And in asking the questions, you are educated and you learn.
I heard you say that our Mocko Jumbies had to water down their performances because it posed a threat to Christian overseers and plantation owners. And so our African identities and spirituality have been infused more as entertainment rather than a religious celebration. And I think I cannot take away that most of the persons in the Virgin Islands identify as Christians. However, there is space to do an infusement of our African identities within our current status as a people.
As our culture evolves, how do you envision incorporating and continuing to utilize the masquerade in our parades and our events.
I'm glad that you asked that. Mocko Jumbies and Masqueraders are of the same style and genre. They're just different types of masqueraders, you would say. And I believe that we need to make it a traditional based programs within our schools, within our community-driven programs. And when I was younger, we had Koelbe dancing, quadrille dancing in our schools. It was an elective. And I think that if we want to show our pride, we need to get programs into, again, our educational institutions and we're in a virtual world right now, so we don't per se have after school anymore. But we have to find innovative ways to make sure it's infused in the culture and identity of all our students, and even to our adults, because they're a whole generation of people who doesn't recognize those characters because it wasn't involved in our school system. And so it's just for more troops to involve it and make sure that it is more modern and fresh, but it takes on the identity of who we are and the people that we came from. And I would beg to say that we don't need to water down our culture so much.
Thank you for joining us for the USVI Division of Festivals Virtual Christmas Festival. And this was the Mocko Jumbie and Masquerade Dialogue with Willard John and Chalana Brown. We'd like to thank our sponsors, First Pack, VI Port Authority, CC1, Crucian Rum, and Via.